Good morning.
Good morning.
Glad it didn't go through 3 times, the charm kind of thing. But good morning and welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Church here in Plano, Texas. So glad to see you here, venturing out in rain. Hope you were safe driving. I left early and I was glad that the rain came a little later than my driving. My name is Reverend Dr. Aija Duelm. I am the minister of this congregation. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. Here we gather and welcome all who are coming through our doors, who come to worship in this sanctuary in person or joining us online. We often have around 10 people, or sometimes more, who are with us every Sunday. We welcome all who are visiting, who are newer to this place. We welcome all who've been here many, many, many times. We are gathering here in this, we call this sanctuary a sanctuary of hope, a place where we welcome all who are looking for fellowship, for meaning, for understanding, because here in this place, the search is encouraged. We also call this sanctuary a sanctuary for soul. We welcome all who are searching for rest and for healing. Healing from various things, including from some spiritual wounds that we may have acquired through our lives. Because many of us have been on rather long journeys. We've engaged spiritual quests to explore the many truths that are out there and trying to decipher which ones will be ours to claim. And we know we are shaped by our past. At the same time, we rest in the present and we look forward to our future. Wherever your journeys take you, please know that you can always come home again to this place that is made sacred by all our love for every one of us. Glad you're here. Our call to worship comes from words written by Reverend Gretchen Haley, "Let astonishment be possible." Whatever you have come in anticipating, whatever you expect or worry for our world, for the future, for our lives, let it go. Make space in your heart to be surprised. Make room in your soul for a new story to take shape. Let astonishment be possible. At this life that remains a miracle, imagine here the bursting of joy, relentless and resilient, coming in waves, washing over us with music and story, silence, and still this dreaming together. Being hope for each other and courage to believe in this new day dawning for all of us. This reading is a reading called Brief Life History of Daniel Christian Limbo. Anyone knows the name already? No? I put it together, so that's why there's no attribution. I wrote it. But it's really an assembling of information from different sources, and you will know why. When Dr. Daniel Christian Limbo was born in February 1855 in Trenton, Smith, Mississippi, his father, Joseph Hall Limbo, was 24. His mother, Sarah Ann Austin, was 22. Daniel Christian married Mary Elizabeth Cranfield on June 26, 1888, in Parker, Texas, United States. They were parents of at least one son and one daughter. He lived in Justice Precinct 7 in Dallas, Texas. He died on November 22nd, 1934, in Fort Worth, Tarrant County, at the age of 79. He was buried in Fort Worth as well. In 1899, Daniel Christian Limbaugh was invited by Rabbi George Alexander Kohut to come and give a talk on Unitarian religion at Temple Emmanuel here in Dallas. In this talk, Limbaugh said, "The time has come in the history of Dallas when a broad and liberal Christianity should be declared here." He was invited back several times to this temple to speak. And during the summer, he became acquainted with several people who were interested in forming a new church. So by the end of that year, the First Unitarian Church of Dallas was formally organized with 32 members. And Limbaugh did not stop with Dallas, but opened up a pastorate in Fort Worth from 1902 through 5. Then in 1942, Reverend Robert Rabel was called to be the minister of that First Unitarian Dallas Church. And then soon, more Unitarian churches began popping up in the Metroplex. On April 15, 1949, Unitarian Church was formed in Fort Worth with a minister, Reverend Richard Koch. Then there were 2 fellowships, Denton UU Fellowship, organized in 1949, and Amarillo's Fellowship in 1950. Tyler Fellowship, 1954. In those days, the churches responded to the development of atomic bomb. They suffered from attacks on communism. They fought for desegregation in their churches and beyond. During the next decade, 60s and 70s, the churches in this area led the church in civil rights and pro-choice efforts. The church became a center of debate on concern during the Vietnam War and the Russian invasion of Czechoslovakia. In 1969, the Women's Alliance at the First Church began to study the issue of abortion, and which made a stage for the now known Roe versus Wade Supreme Court decision. And it was also the time of reclaimed freedom in our larger culture. More Unitarian Universalist churches began to pop up. UU Church of Oak Cliff was organized in 1961. Arlington UU Church in 1965. Sacred Journey, or what it was called Richardson Unitarian Church, in 1967. And then, in 1975, the community found its birth. When we share our story, where do we begin? Do we start with our birth? Do we start with our parents? Or do we go back, way back, to the story of our ancestors, to look at their stories that set the tone for ours? When I tell my story, I often begin with the most descriptive and telling things that I can. I say that I am Latvian. I cannot tell my personal story without it. My biography begins with it because it sets the tone for that culture and a place that influenced my birth, my upbringing, also my parents' and grandparents' upbringing. It shaped what I believe about the world, about God, human agency, about evil and goodness, salvation and liberation. Without this context, it will not tell you much to know that I grew up in an atheist household. Because the context will explain that during that time, atheism was the dominant cultural perspective. It was taught in schools. It was in the popular culture. There was only one religion at the time, and it was the worship of communism. That all the other religious traditions, faith traditions, were persecuted. And only a few of them managed to survive by operating underground. It was only later in my life that religion became important to me. The same with our church and faith history. In the reading that I shared today with you, I didn't start with the formation of the church. I started with how our faith came to this area, to the DFW Metroplex area. I probably could have started much sooner than that, how our faith even showed up in this world, but that's going to happen later in the class today. Where do our stories begin? How do we understand what was happening in our area, in the place that gave us life, that shaped the world around us, that grounding, that fertile ground for developing this congregation, opening up space for the church to be born? Who has shaped the context for your story? How did we decide to change the course of that story? Pivot into a new direction? Find courage to embrace something new, previously not known or familiar? And how do we honor memories and traditions from our past? I know some of us have some restless ghosts as well in our past. So what do we do with them? What do we do with those memories and experiences that we do not wish on anyone? It is important to hear and know our stories of the past, so we can find ourselves in the middle of that story. And I know all of us, all of you here have stories. We have stories that we tell over and over about our lives, how we chose our career, how we met our spouses, about the birth of children or death in the family. We tell our stories to reinforce our experience, to make sense of it, so that we can understand better what has happened to us and who we are as a result. This is true for trauma as well as joy, failure as well as success. This is also true for stories about our faith, how we arrived to the beliefs that we hold today, why we are here in this community today, and how it resonates with us now as we reflect on our spiritual journeys and things that matter to us. Our faith stories often include memories of our past experiences with faith communities and beliefs that have changed now. There are quite a few of us here who would be considered converts. We used to attend a different faith tradition, and at some point we left it, and then we found Unitarian Universalism. Statistics show that about 87% of us are the converts. We have found Unitarian Universalism after having engaged or even belonged to other religious traditions. And some of us have left those traditions because simply life happened. Others continue to maintain connections to those traditions. And then there are some of us who left our previous faith traditions because it was too painful to us. There were teachings that we could not agree with. There were practices that we could not accept. Or we simply asked too many questions that made others uncomfortable. Among UUs, there are quite a few of us who have rather complicated stories about our religious past. Even more complicated stories, more complicated relationships with God and the doctrine about God, to the point that we react when God's name is being mentioned. And that indicates that there's still lots of healing needed from the religious trauma that we have experienced. There are a few of us who grew up Unitarian Universalist. About 12.5% of all UUs grew up in this faith. So if we look around, I guess about 10. Here we go. There's one. I know there's more, but they might be home today. We know Robin and Mina. Mina is the third generation Unitarian, Mina Daphne. They never moved from a different faith tradition. And this faith itself has evolved and changed. So they too experience transitions. Shifting ways of believing from solely Unitarian or solely Universalist. Were you Unitarian or Universalist? You all are life. You all are life. Okay. Sorry. 86. Yeah, that's Mine was Unitarian and then became UU. The tradition also learned to embrace other wisdom from other religions, from humanism. The tradition challenged itself, our faith challenged, to embrace more social justice commitments. And the very latest change that happened in our faith is we said goodbye to the language of principles and started using values to express our faith. And these transitions in our faith and our belief system, they do carry warm and meaningful memories, and then it could also hold some grief and a feeling of loss. When I was in my 20s, I found my spiritual home. It was among Christian students in the campus ministry group. This community was deeply meaningful in my formation as an emerging adult. I was working on figuring out who I am and why am I here in this world. And I remember worship experiences in this group, songs that we sang, and how they moved my soul. I remember the fellowship, the joy of being together with others, having fun together, discovering things together, We organized camps and retreats, and it was in this community that I first heard my call to ministry. So yes, I have some warm and sweet memories from this time. Some songs that I still find beautiful. However, I also encountered some painful things that turned into those restless ghosts for me. And from time to time, they haunted me. This was not a community that supported women in ministry. And when I began to respond to my call, it became very clear that somehow I was no longer fitting. I had gotten the message wrong. I needed to be corrected and put in my place. Yet instead of giving up on my call to ministry, I persisted. I went through many challenges, and ultimately, I chose to leave that community. The community that did not provide theological foundation or spiritual support for my call. And I will be honest with you, it was painful. I lost my spiritual home. I experienced grief and also anger, because the messages that I was taught there felt abusive, restrictive, and limiting. They were also based in fear. I explored other faith communities, but it wasn't until I walked into a Unitarian Universalist congregation that I found a place where my beliefs and convictions could find a new home. This was a place where I could talk about God and the many different ways to see her. This community was able to hold my questions and explorations for which I did not have clear answers at the time. This was also a place where other people believed completely something different from my experience, and it was okay. So I am biased when I say that Unitarian Universalism offers space for your faith and will hold you while you work out your beliefs, because that was my experience. There are many resources now about religious trauma and recovery process. And religious trauma is defined as any experience of a religious belief, practice, or structure that undermines an individual's sense of safety or autonomy and negatively impacts their physical, social, emotional, relational, or psychological well-being. Some people go to therapy to work through the negative experiences and revisit their beliefs, engage deconstruction. It's the process, the way we call that process of reevaluating, changing, and sometimes abandoning some beliefs. Because yes, there are people who have left church and religion and faith altogether. However, finding a more congruent belief system means that now people face a new reality. Changing beliefs is a natural starting point, but it does not necessarily equate to healing. And we can tell this by how often we are triggered when we hear certain words or see rituals that remind us of that past history. The process of healing takes more than just changing our beliefs. Healing requires reconnecting with our bodies. For me, it required to discover how to grieve, be angry, and feel my way through that emotional terrain which is uncomfortable and takes much longer than we would like. This healing process looks different for everybody, and we will do ourselves a favor if we don't compare ourselves to others. This is one of the key components of the healing process, to practice self-compassion. Treat ourselves with the same kindness and care that we would offer to our dear friend or a family member, or maybe even a stranger. It may be that some of us may need to engage a kinder self-talk when we talk about ourselves, to be able to tell ourselves that, yes, it makes sense why I feel this way, rather than judging ourselves or even shaming ourselves. And another component is not being alone. Religious harm occurs within a community. Recovery and restoration also requires a community. It could be a faith community, and it could be another kind of community, but it is a place that welcomes in and offers a safe space and support. When we get to a place where it is safe to explore our faith, talk about our doubts and questions, revisit some past painful experiences, the possibilities open up for healing and transformation. We may find a way to remember with warmth and care people who were once dear to us. To talk about the experiences that were meaningful to us at some point. To recall what we valued, maybe certain rituals or practices that we miss right now. It may also allow us to reflect on and appreciate how we have grown since then. We might get to a place where we can talk with respect about religious views from our past and know that God did not create us to be puppets. When we feel the warmth and belonging in being in the community, any community, the old turtle from the story smiles, and even God is pleased. By Steve Crump. That which is worthy of doing, create with your hands. That which is worthy of repeating, speak with a clear voice. That which is worthy remembering, hold in your hearts. And that which is worthy of living, go and live it now. Amen.